If you've been learning to crochet and you're enjoying making things with your hands, you are very much in the right place. My name's Fiona, and over the years I have taught hundreds of people how to crochet, both in small in-person workshops and right here on this channel. And today I'm going to be sharing with you how to crochet this traditional granny square in 3 different colours. The granny square itself is actually worked in rounds, and to make it easier to know exactly where you're working, I would recommend grabbing 3 different colours if you have them, so that we can see exactly where we're working these stitches. Now I'm going to be using Aran weight scraps of yarn today. You can use any yarn weight that you have to hand. Just use the recommended hook size for the weight of the yarn that you're using. Because I am using an Aran weight yarn, I will be using the recommended hook size of 5mm. This is my trusty Knit Pro soft grip handled 5mm crochet hook. So that I can show you exactly what we're doing, I have 4 stitch markers on hand because all squares should have 4 corners. We can mark those corners as we go. As your square gets even bigger, you can still find those corners easily. If you don't have 3 colours, don't worry, you can do this with 2 or even 1, whatever is going to be easiest for you using the tools you have to hand. The traditional granny square is very beginner friendly, and I always start my granny squares the exact same way, just making a slip knot, creating a circle with a beginning chain, which gives you the most secure start to any granny square. We're going to start our granny square by making our slip knot the usual way, just by placing our tail in our palm, bringing one loop over and the other loop over and off to create our slip knot, before placing that onto our hook and using the yarn to hug the hook nicely. We're then going to make a chain of 4, so we wrap the yarn over the hook and bring it through for the first chain, wrap it over again, pull it through for the second, and repeat that a further 2 times. So that's 2, 3 and 4. This loop never counts, so we have 1, 2, 3 and 4 chains. We're going to make a slip stitch into that first chain that we made, so working back down and inserting our hook into the top loop of the first chain that we made right by our slip knot. I'm just going to place my finger on there to stop it moving a little bit too much, and we're just going to insert underneath the top loop of the very first chain that we made. We're going to yarn over the hook towards us and bring it back through the chain, and then we're going to bring it straight through the other loop on our hook, and that's a slip stitch. Believe it or not, that has created a ring that we are going to work into. You'll see that you've got 2 holes there. The top one right here is where we've just joined, and this other hole is actually the middle of the circle that we've made, and that's where we're going to be working. The stitch that we use throughout this video is a US double crochet, the same as a UK treble crochet. And to bring our hook to the height of that stitch, we're going to begin by making a chain of 3. So we're going to yarn over and bring our hook through the loop 3 times to make 3 chains. So that was 1, 2 and 3. This chain of 3 actually counts as our first stitch in this round, so we're going to continue on, but we're now working into the center of that ring. So not into the top loop, but into that middle ring there. You can shove your finger through to make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to identify. We're going to yarn over the hook, ready to work our first double crochet, and once we've yarned over, we're going to insert into that center of the ring. We're then going to yarn over and bring that hook back through the center of the ring so that we have our 3 loops. We're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops before we yarn over once again and pull through the remaining 2 loops. So now we have a chain of 3 and our first double crochet. We're going to continue to work into the center of that ring, and I'd recommend, if you can, holding the tail yarn to the side of the ring that we're creating and working over it. I'll explain more when we make the next one. So we're going to make another US double crochet. So we yarn over the hook, insert back into that center of the ring where we've just worked that stitch by inserting and making sure that tail is also over the hook as well. Just hold them together so that when you yarn over and bring your hook back through, you're not bringing that extra loop with you. You'll have your 3 loops, yarn over, pull through those first 2 loops before we yarn over again and pull through the last 2. Our chain 3 and those 2 double crochets make something called the granny stitch, which is usually made up of 1, 2, 3 double crochets. Because this chain 3 counts as our first stitch, this makes up the first 3 of our granny square. Once we've made these 3 double crochets, we're going to make our first corner, and our corners are always made up of a chain of 2. So we're going to yarn over and pull through to make our first chain. We're going to yarn over the hook again and pull through to make our second chain. This is going to create a space between these blocks of granny stitch to create our corners. We're going to repeat making 3 double crochets, still working into the center of that ring and holding that tail to the side. So we're going to yarn over the hook and go back into the center of that ring. We're going to yarn over, bring our loop up, neaten that up a bit. So we have our 3 loops. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's, you can see that space that we've created for that corner. And at this point, if you want to, you can grab a stitch marker and just place it into that chain 2 space so that we can really see these corners. So this is the first of the 3 double crochets that we're making for our next granny block. So let's yarn over, ready to work the second into the middle of our circle, not where we've placed our stitch marker. So we've yarned over, we're inserting into the center of that ring, and I'm still holding that tail against. We're yarning over and bringing our 3rd loop up. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over again and pull through 2. I'm rotating slightly so I can see that center of the ring perfectly. We're going to yarn over, insert again back into the center of that ring, and I'm still holding that tail next to it, the ring. We're yarning over, bringing our 3rd loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So from where we've marked that chain 2 corner space, we have worked a further 3 double crochets, and now we are ready to make our next corner. So we're going to make our chain of 2. We yarn over, pull through to make a chain of 1, yarn over and make a second chain. We're then going to work a 3rd block of 3 double crochets. So we yarn over, still holding that tail against the center, going to insert back into that center space, yarn over, bring your loop up, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and I'm going to mark that corner space again. I'm going to grab a stitch marker and place it into that corner and just lock it in place. So we now have 2 corners. Making sure that we've got that tail held up against the side of that middle ring. And if you find that you are running out of space a little bit, if you hold your beginning chain and the circle and the stitch underneath your hook, and you can pull it around just to give you a bit more space in the middle to continue working. So making sure that you're holding that tail against the center, we can yarn over to make another double crochet. So that's 1 and 2 after the marker. We're going to make a 3rd double crochet, again into that center of the ring. And now we've made our 3rd block of 3 double crochets. So we have 1 and 2 corners already. We're going to make our 3rd corner by making a chain of 2. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through. Just going to move that around a little bit more so we have some space, and I'm still holding that tail against the side. We're going to yarn over and work a double crochet again into the center of that ring. Bring your loop up, make sure that you have your 3 loops, pull through 2 and pull through 2. I'm going to mark my 3rd corner, which is that space before the stitch we've just made. And then we're ready to make a further 2 double crochets into the center of that ring. So that's 1 and 2. I'm going to readjust it so that that's looking a bit better. So if you need to move your stitches around, don't worry, you can. It's not against the law. So we have 1, 2, 3 corners. So we're going to make our last corner by making a chain of 2. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through. And then to join this corner, we're going to slip stitch to the top of our chain 3. So at the beginning of our round, we made a chain of 3. So I've got 1, 2 and 3. And my top tip for joining is ignoring, so you have a bit of a space, that's fine, we're supposed to. And that stitch here, you see how you've got your 2 V's at the top of these stitches. We're going to count up these V's and find the 3rd one. And we're going to insert our hook through the middle of that 3rd V. And we're going to try and get onto our hook 2 loops of that beginning chain. So you've got 1 at the front and there's the 2nd one. I'm going to do that again. So 1, 2, there's my 3rd chain, and if I make it neat again, you're looking for the V. You're going to insert through the middle of the V and push onto your hook those loops, and then to slip stitch them, we're just yarning over, pulling through and straight through the loop on our hook. And that creates that last corner space for us to mark. Yours might not look perfectly square because mine doesn't either, but rest assured you have made a square. Might be that some corners are a bit more square than others, but as long as you have, take my hook out to show you, 1, 2, 3, 4 corners marked, you'll have 1, 2, 3 and 4 sides. Now in this middle you have a hole, and if you were able to work over the tail, if you pull it gently, it will bring in that hole at the back. It's worth mentioning that I do not begin my granny squares, no matter what the pattern says. I never begin a traditional granny square with a magic circle, because even when you've wound that yarn in or threaded it through, it can unfortunately still come undone. Whereas, as you know, our slip knots are pretty much fail safe and they will not come undone. At the end of this video, I will show you how to securely weave this end in and create a really tight circle in the middle. So this is the end of the first round of our granny square, and we're going to fasten off and change colours. But before we cut our yarn, we're going to bring our yarn over to our next corner. So we've slip stitched into the top of our chain 3, and you can see that this, if I cover that up, you should have 2 more V's, your top of your stitches, and we're going to insert underneath the top of the next stitch. So if I pull that apart a little bit, you see there's the hole. We're going to go underneath and pick up both loops of our next stitch and slip stitch. So we yarn over, pull through, straight through the loop on our hook. We don't want them to be too tight, don't want them to be too loose either. And then we can see, just see peeking out there, the hole underneath that next V. So we go underneath, pop both loops of that V on of the next stitch. We're going to yarn over, pull through and straight through the loop on our hook. Now finally, we're going to bring our working yarn into that marked corner space. So we're going to insert into the big space that we made of that chain 2 and slip stitch into there as well. We can then make a chain 1 before we cut the yarn. And this is where I should have remembered to bring my scissors. There we are, I found them. And we can just snip the yarn, leaving a reasonable length of tail. And then using our hook, we're going to bring the end of that tail through the loop on our hook. And that will make a knot to keep it secure for a moment while we work our next round. So now we have, it looks more square when you fastened off, I think, because it makes that edge look a bit straighter. So at the end of round 1, you should have 4 corners and 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 3DC, 3 double crochets, that means, or 3 granny stitches. Now I'm going to remove one of my stitch markers, doesn't matter which one at this point. I'm actually going to go for the corner opposite because we're going to start working our second round. So once you have an unmarked corner, I'm going to insert my hook from the back out the front. You can just feed this through and grab a second colour. Make sure that that middle tail is at the back of your project so that when you come through, you can just place your yarn over the hook, bringing it through with your working yarn at the front, so your tail is at the back of your new colour. We are simply going to make a knot and tie this on. Again, we're going to make sure that that beginning tail is at the back of our project, and then we are ready to start working round 2 in our new joined colour. To do that, we're going to insert back into that chain 2 corner space that we made. We're going to bring the yarn over the top of the hook and bring it back through the front. And then we are ready to start making our first stitch. We're going to make, once again, a chain of 3. So we yarn over, bring that loop through the hook, yarn over, bring it through, yarn over and bring it through. And that makes our chain of 3 that counts as our first double crochet of round 2. We're going to then make a further 2 double crochets into that same chain 2 space. So we yarn over the hook and we're inserting into that same space, yarn over, bring that loop back up, ready to work your double crochet by pulling through 2 and pulling through 2. So now we have 2 in that same space. We're going to work our third. So we yarn over, insert back into that same space, bring that loop up again, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Now you may think, oh, that is completely full, that space, but just like when we were working into that circle, we can bring our stitches around a little bit and see that there is more space to work. Because we are in a corner, it had that stitch marker in it, we're going to work that corner stitch. So we've done 3 double crochets, that first chain 3 counted as our first one, and we have a further 2 stitches in there. We're then going to make a chain of 2. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that is replicating the space we have underneath these stitches. To complete our corner, we have to work a further 3 double crochets into that same space. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, bring our loop up. There are 3 loops on my hook, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And you see we've created that corner space. You can, of course, place your marker back into it just to help keeping those corners identifiable really easily. And we need to finish this corner working those further 2 double crochets. So yarn over, insert into that corner space again, yarn over for a third time into that same space. If I move my hook up a little bit, I'll be able to show you what we've done. So we have that beginning chain 3, then we worked 2 double crochets, we made a chain of 2 and marked our corner, and then we worked a further 3 double crochets all into that same space. We're going to skip over all of these stitches here and work where we've placed that next stitch marker. So I'm just going to remove that. And in case yours is spun around, just remember to make sure that this beginning tail is on the back. Before we work into that corner space, we have to step over these stitches, and to do that we simply make a chain of 1. And then we are ready to work our corner again into that corner space. So we yarn over and insert into that corner space to work the first of 3 double crochets. So that was 1. We're yarning over again and inserting to make another double crochet. So that's 2. We're yarning over and inserting for a 3rd time to make that granny block. We need to create our chain 2 space, the same as that's underneath these stitches. So we pull through, yarn over and pull through to create that chain of 2. And then we are working a further 3 double crochets into that same unmarked corner. So we're going to yarn over and reinsert into the same space, not here. So you want that space between. We're going back into where we've just been working. That's 1. We yarn over again for number 2. We yarn over again for number 3. I'm going to pop my marker back into that chain 2 space. And now you can see that we've added 2 corners back into our square. So you may have come across your tail in this next corner, but we have to remember to step across these stitches. So we need to do a chain of 1, and then we are ready to work into this corner. Just going to take this marker out for a moment. And yeah, we have this annoying tail, but we just need to keep it out of our way a little bit. So I'm just going to hold it against my project before beginning that next corner. We're going to be working the same as we have here. So 1, 2, 3 double crochets, that chain of 2, and a further 3 double crochets into this space. So we yarn over, ready for number 1, and insert. We bring our loop up, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that's number 1. We yarn over for the 2nd and repeat that US double crochet, and for a 3rd time. So we have 3 stitches all worked into that same space, and you just saw me gently tug on that tail, keeping it in place there. We need to replicate that space underneath our hook, so we make a chain of 2. That's 1 and 2. And we need to work a further 3 double crochets into that same space. So we yarn over, insert into the same space, again, not here, but into where we've just been working. That's 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to grab my marker and just place that back into that space. And now you can see that we have 1, 2, 3 of our corners complete, and we just have 1 more corner to work. We're nearly there. So before we work into the corner, we have to step across that stitch, those stitches underneath. So we make a chain of 1, and then I'm going to remove that marker, making sure that my tails are at the back. Yep. We've done our chain of 1 to step across, and into this final corner we are once again working 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, that chain of 2, and a further 3 double crochets. So we yarn over, ready to work the first of those 3. That's number 1. Yarn over again for number 2. yarn over again for number 3. We are then going to make a chain of 2 to replicate that space underneath our hook. Move those out of the way. We then yarn over to work a further 3 double crochets into that same chain 2 corner space. This is the final one. And then we can grab our marker and place it back into our corner. So before we make that final join, we need to step across these stitches here. So we make a chain of 1 so that all our sides match. And then once again, we're going to join to the top of that chain 3. So we've got chain 1, chain 2. This is my 3rd chain here. It's a very small V. It's going to cover up my stitch. So 1, 2, 3. And we're aiming to insert our hook into that little hole there, so that we can push on, I do have to push them on because it's a bit small, both loops of our chain. Oops. And then we can slip stitch by yarning over, pulling through and straight through the loop on our hook. And then we have made the 2nd round of our granny square. Before we fasten off and change colour again, we're going to slip stitch over to the corner. So that means we're going to slip stitch into the top of each of the next 2 stitches and into that chain 2 space. So we insert into the top of the next stitch. So we're looking for that V, and there is a little hole underneath, she says. It is a very little hole. So this one where the yarn is coming out, we've slip stitch 2. This is the next one. So we're going underneath that V, inserting our hook through, making sure we have both loops onto our hook, and pull through and straight through the loop on our hook. And you can see the next one a lot easier. So it's not this hole, it's that top hole. Getting that stitch on, pulling through, straight through the loop on your hook. And finally, we're slip stitching into that marked corner by inserting, pulling through and straight through the loop on our hook. I'm going to make a chain of 1, and then I'm ready to cut my yarn and fasten this colour off. Bring that tail through that loop, give it a pull to secure, and there you have the 2nd round of your granny square completed. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, and now we have some extra holes on the side as well. If your square is looking like this, congratulations, this is the hardest part, all done and dusted. So I've removed my stitch marker and I'm going to insert my hook from the back out the front, ready to join our next colour by just placing it over the hook and pulling that end through. And of course, just for a bit of security, I'm going to knot that lightly, making sure that my beginning tail is on the back. So once you've knotted your yarn on, make sure that you've got your working yarn in your hand. I'm just placing that to the side to keep it out of the way. Going to insert our hook once again through the corner that we've just joined, yarn over and bring it through. And this is how all your rounds will start. We begin with that chain of 3. So we yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3 times, and that's 3. So 1, 2, and 3. This counts as your first double crochet of the first group of 3 you're going to make. Now, because we've joined in the corner, we're going to replicate exactly what is underneath. So we've done our chain of 3, which counts as this stitch. Then we're going to do a further 2 double crochets. So we yarn over, insert into that corner space that you just joined in, yarn over and bring your loop up, yarn over to pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's 1 and 2. We're going to yarn over again, reinsert into that big corner space, yarn over to bring your loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. We can then replicate the space underneath by making our chain of 2, and then we're working a further 3 double crochets into that same chain 2 corner space. That's 1, 2, and then number 3. I'm going to place my stitch marker just back into my corner again so that I know that I've completed that and we're ready to move on. Because we're skipping all of these stitches, we're going to make a chain of 1 to step across the block underneath, and we're now going to work into that next space. Now we know it's not marked, so it's not a corner. So into the sides of our squares, if you see there, we're working across this edge over to our next marked corner. Into this side space, we simply work 3 double crochets. So we yarn over, insert into the big space between those blocks. So that's the first double crochet. You can see that it's in the middle of those stitches. We yarn over, insert, and work a second double crochet, and we yarn over a third time, working back into that space to make another double crochet. So this is the granny block that is worked on its own into the sides of your projects. We have to step over the next few stitches, so we make a chain of 1, and then we are back to a marked corner. So once again, we're going to work our corner block of 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all into that space there. So I'm going to remove my marker, ready to work our next corner. Just check that that tail is at the back, and then we are ready to yarn over, and we're working into that corner space, and we are working 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to recreate that space by making a chain of 2, and then we're working back into that same space again. We yarn over, insert back into the same corner to work a further 3 double crochets. If you've made your corner, you can continue on by marking that, just so we know where they are. And then we are on the side of our square again, because we have a space before our next marked corner. So we're going to step across this block here by making a chain of 1, and then into that side space we are working 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. We need to step across to reach that corner, so we're going to make a chain of 1, and we are ready to work into our next corner space. So we can remove our marker, and we have a tail in the way, so I'm just going to hold that against the side and rotate a bit so I can see that lovely corner space to work into. Into our corner, we are replicating what's underneath, so we're going to do 3 double crochets, a chain of 2, and 3 double crochets. Once you have completed working 3 double crochets, a chain of 2, and 3 double crochets, you can place your marker back into your corner space. And I like looking at this point because you can see that we are making our way all the way around that square. So we need to step across that next block by making a chain of 1, and then we are in the middle. It's not marked, so we just need to work 3 double crochets into that space. And that's number 3. Need to step across this block to reach our marked corner, so we make a chain of 1, and then we are ready to work into our corner space. So once again, we can remove that marker, and we are ready to work 3 double crochets, a chain of 2, and 3 double crochets all into that space. Chain 2, and work your further 3 double crochets. I'm going to place my marker back into that chain 2 space that we've recreated in that corner, and then we are going to step across this block underneath by making a chain of 1. This is not marked, so we simply make 3 double crochets into that space. And we are back to the beginning. All that's left to do is to make a chain of 1 to step across this space here. And then we are ready to join to the top of our chain 3. Now cream is not the easiest colour to show you, but we have 1, 2, and number 3 is just here on the side. This is the stitch, so I'm going to cover that up. I've got 1, 2, 3 chains. If I move that slightly, I can see that that's where I need to insert my hook, and it might be a bit of a struggle to push those 2 loops on. There we go, and we're just going to slip stitch to join the round. And then we're going to slip stitch across the next 2 stitches and into that chain 2 corner space. So there's where I've joined. There's the next one. I'm just going to go underneath the V and slip stitch. There's the next one. And then I'm going to finally slip stitch into, oh, not with the stitch marker on, slip stitch into that corner. I'm going to make a chain of 1. And then we are ready to fasten off. Use my hook to bring that tail all the way through the loop. And there we are. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners of our granny square. Once you've reached this point, you can continue to repeat this round all the way around, and this is what's going to increase, is the number of spaces to work into between your corners. But as long as you have 4 corners and they are aligned and you're still looking like a square, you are making a granny square. Now, as always, I'm going to rotate before I add my colour change into the opposite corner of where I fastened off. This just keeps your tails a little bit further away, and I'm going to rejoin the first colour that I used in my granny square just by putting it over the hook, bringing it through the corner and tying it on. As I mentioned, I rotated it again to make sure all these tails are on the back of my granny square. We are always going to start with the exact same way, and that's with a chain of 3, which counts as our first double crochet. So we work a further 2, make a chain of 2 and 3 double crochets all into where we've joined. So we're going to insert, bring that loop back through, and then make our chain of 3. We work a further 2 double crochets into that same chain 2 corner space. So that's our first granny block. We make a chain of 2 because we're in the corner and we're replicating that space, and we work a further 3 double crochets into, let me catch that yarn there, into that same chain 2 corner space. Just going to pop my marker back in. Just makes it really easy to see that our corners are still square. So if we look across the side now, this time we have 2 spaces to work into before we get to our next marked corner. So we're going to step across this block here by making a chain of 1, and then into each of the next 2 spaces we are working just 3 double crochets followed by a chain of 1. So that's 1, 2 and 3. We step across by making a chain of 1. We have another space to work before our corner, so we're just working 3 double crochets into our side spaces. That's number 3. We are then going to make our chain of 1 to step across to get into our corner. It should be looking a little bit like this at the moment. Into our chain 2 corner spaces that we've marked, we continue to work 3 double crochets, we replicate the space by making a chain of 2, and we work a further 3 double crochets into that same chain 2 corner space. I'm going to place my marker back into the corner space so that we've got that corner marked. And then we are ready to step across by making a chain of 1 and then working into that side space with 3 double crochets. We're still not at the marked stitch, so I'm going to make a chain of 1 to step across and work 3 double crochets into that next space. We then need to step across to get into that next marked corner. But this, where we are now, shows you exactly what we are doing on each side of our square. So into the corners where we have our stitch marker, we work 3 double crochets, a chain of 2 and 3 double crochets. We step across by making a chain of 1, and then into the side spaces we are just working those 3 double crochets. So we've stepped across with a chain of 1, worked 3 double crochets, step across, and we're to our marked corner where we will once again repeat our corner, which is 3 double crochets, a chain 2 and then a further 3 double crochets all into that same chain 2 corner space. So it really does help to replace those stitch markers so that you know exactly where you are working those corner spaces. I'm going to continue to work and repeat this all the way around. So because I've got a step here, I'm going to do a chain of 1. And then I'm on to the side of my square, so it's just 3 double crochets. Chain 1 to step across. We're still on the side because I haven't got a marked stitch, so it's just a further 3 double crochets. Step across with a chain 1, and we're back to a marked stitch, so I'm ready to work my corner for the final time. Into the corners we work 3 double crochets, a chain of 2 and a further 3 double crochets. Pop my marker back in. And then I'm ready to work my final side. I need to step across with a chain of 1, and then I'm on to the side spaces, so it's just a chain of 3. Oh no, it's not, God. So I'm on the side of my project, so I just need to work 3 double crochets into these spaces. We're going to step across, so we chain 1, and then into the next space. Once again, it's not marked, so we're just working 3 double crochets. I need to step across, and then we've reached that first corner that we made, and we need to slip stitch to join. So I'm counting 1, 2, there's my third chain, and I'm going to insert right into the middle and push so that I get those 2 loops and slip stitch to join. We're going to slip stitch across into the corner space, working, slip stitching into the next 2 stitches, finishing with a slip stitch into that marked corner, and I'm going to fasten off with a chain of 1. And pull that tail through to complete that granny square. So on the next round, if we were to continue on, you can see that we now have 3 spaces to work on our sides. The corners remain in the same place, there's just more square between them. If you wanted to, you can continue working additional rounds in different colours, making sure that with your marked stitches you do continue repeating that corner block, and then you step across with a chain 1, and into the side spaces you're simply working 3 double crochets. Now, one of the challenges I mentioned earlier, that with working a different colour in each round, you do end up with quite a lot of tails. So if you're happy that your square is correct at this point, you can continue to add more rounds to it if you want to. But what I would recommend is every kind of week or so is kind of weave some of these ends in. So once your square is all complete and you've reached the size that you want, or you're halfway through and this is just annoying you, you can at any point weave in your ends as long as you know that everything is correct. So if you've got a rogue bit sticking out, the chances are that you haven't quite finished properly and you might need to correct something on that last round. So I'm going to remove my stitch markers because I hate the noise of them clacking on my desk, so just bear with. We need to deal with all of these ends, but what I'm going to do is just kind of move them to one side at the moment so I can start with this all-important centre circle. I have a regular plastic darning needle, nothing exciting, and I'm just feeding that through the eye of the needle. And what we're going to do is to weave this in the direction that we worked. So once it's on your needle, you need a bit of a tail, and we're simply going to feed the needle through the back of these loops close to the middle circle. You don't have to go through all of the loops at one time. And then I'm going to miss one maybe and go through the next little clump. I'm rotating just so it's easier to pull. And you can keep doing that. Now, crochet in theory is not supposed to have any knots in it. That's the rules, but rules are made to be broken. And as you see, if I pull this tighter, it closes that hole completely. The important thing is that when you are weaving ends in, you don't want to be able to see the needle on the front of your project, which is why I use a colourful needle, because it makes it easier to spot. For instance, if I come through the front here, you can see that I've only caught one loop and everyone's going to see my tail. So then I can just readjust and go through different stitches, and you can see that it's not showing on the front. Just do that a few times. If you want to, you can also go back the other direction, just so that you've woven it in as securely as possible. And when you're happy with how many times you've woven that needle through those back of those stitches, you can very simply take the darning needle off, grab your scissors, and if I move everything out of the way, we're just going to cut close to the bottom of our stitch. And if it's poking out ever so slightly, just give it a bit of a pull around and that will disappear. And that's closed that centre hole almost perfectly. Unfortunately, we have to weave in all of these ends. As you can see that we've almost got a contrasting colour to weave through here. And we want our square to look reasonably pretty on both sides. So I fed that end through my needle, and what I'm going to do is pick up a loop of the purple colour just before. I'm going to pick up one of these purple loops before I go through, and I'm going to go underneath these pink loops at the back. going to try and get all of them in one go so that when my needle comes through, I can't see the needle on the front, so then I won't, oh I can actually, but, oh no I can't, it's just the light. So that when I pull the different colour through, it's secured by looping it through the purple. I'm going to pull gently, not too tightly because I don't want to change the shape of my square. And I'm going to come back the other way again. And you see how I've got a loop here of purple. I'm going to come through that first and then underneath all these pink loops again. Pull it through, and that's going to be quite secure. So I can take my darning needle off and once again snip closely to the end of my yarn. You can see it just there, but gentle pull and it disappears. Now I'd always recommend weaving your ends 3 times, so 1 way, 2 ways and 3 ways. Now because I've already worked over these ends as I've joined the new colour, that counts as my first weave in my mind anyway. So I'm going to repeat it again with the next colour. So again, it's contrasting colour. So I'm going to, oh, it's not a contrasting colour. In theory, we're weaving over pink. So I'm still going to just pick up a tiny bit. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of that purple loop before I come through these pink ones. It's not quite as essential because obviously it's the same colour that we're weaving. And then bring that through. So that counts as my second one. I'm running out of yarn because I've made my tail too short. So I'm going to put it back through. You'll see that I've come out here and I'm going under this next one, just so it's a little bit further away. And then push through. And that should be quite well secured. So that one is ready to snip. So continue on weaving your ends, and then we're going to talk about this final join here. So I have woven in all the ends except my final one. Now what you will find is the way that we fastened off, it does create a bit of a lump where we did that last chain one. So on your final round, I'm going to undo that last slip stitch and bring my yarn back through so that it's on the wrong side of, coming out the back. Because what we want to do is to create an almost seamless finish. So you're going to need your darning needle and not your crochet hook. I'm going to bring that loop all the way through and then weave it in, because it just makes it a bit of a smoother end rather than finishing in that final corner. I'm just going to come underneath the stitch and bring that knot through from that last slip stitch and then weave down the back of the stitch. So that's the loop I've come out from underneath. So I'm going to just go underneath this one and through the stitch to come out down here. So it just gives us a more seamless finish on our corner. And then we can just weave it in through these loops at the back again so that no one will see it. So look at that perfect square. So just to prove that mine is also not perfectly square, there is a technique that I would recommend you research when you've made a few of them, which is how to block your squares. I have a video that I've linked in the description box for you for your continued learning. I'd love to know how you've gotten on with making your very own granny square. So do let me know in the comments what colours you used, how many rounds you're going to make, and if you're going to continue to make more and more rounds as time goes on.